Hello, all you hellions, and welcome back. Vincent and I have quite the video for you today, which is all about the first rendition to the short story filmed in 1928 titled The Fall of the House of Usher. I watched this for free on YouTube. So what I plan on doing this week is we're going to discuss this movie, the first one made after this story, and we're going to talk about similarities and differences to the original short story. So sit back, kick your feet up, and let's dive in. Right away you notice that not only is this film in black and white, it is also a silent film. I've always loved silent horror films. The acting is over the top to make up for the lack of dialect, and with many horror movies, the music helps to tell the story, and just listen to that music. It really sets the tone well for the melancholy and dread that Poe wrote of. We see the letter that is also spoken of in the short story from Roderick Usher that bids his best and only friend to come to his home. He speaks of Madeline being ill and fearing close to death, and that Roderick will be next. All of this was correct. What made my eyebrows raise was that Roderick and Madeline Usher were not twin siblings, as told in the story, but husband and wife. It was mentioned in the story, however, that the Usher family tree had very few outside branches, that they kept it in the family. Perhaps them now being siblings is a nod to that. The friend, who, like in the story, is never given a name, is seen going to an inn in town to rent a horse and buggy and a man to drive him to the Usher home. This does not happen in the story. The friend arrives alone on horseback. It is mentioned in the story that the townsfolk fear the Ushers and their home. I believe this scene was probably added to depict this. As the friend arrives and is dropped off as close to the house as his driver was willing to go, we see the grounds. Just as in the short story, we see the tarn, or small mountain lake, in front of the house. There are patches of weeds and dark, twisted tree trunks. The inside of the house is much as was depicted in the story. You have long hallways with large windows covered by long, tattered curtains. You get a real feel of an old family home, lots of large rooms, and it just looks very dark and dreary. Books and instruments are strewn about the main room. The furniture is old and tattered, and also an air of melancholy. The doctor charged with caring for the Lady Madeline is also in this movie, as is the doorman. And like in the story, the doctor knows not what ails her. It was also mentioned that the Ushers were amazing artists, that their paintings were so beautiful that they were beyond description. This is touched upon in the film as well. Where it differs is that every male Usher was passionate about painting his wife's portrait in this movie. In the original writing, Madeline suffered from cataleptic fits, a medical condition that causes the body to appear dead. In this film, it is the painting that is her downfall. The more Roderick obsessively paints her portrait, the more lifelike it becomes, and the more faded she becomes. It is cleverly shown that Roderick has heightened senses, such as hearing. It was written he suffered from this. A sensitivity to light, most fabrics were unbearable to him, and was only able to listen to stringed instruments. Here they only show the sensitive hearing and add a malady, a fever. The short story also had Roderick playing his guitar. I feel that they did an amazing job depicting that in this movie. A small scene that was added showed Roderick now wanting his friend to leave. He was so obsessed with painting the portrait that he only wanted himself and Madeline in attendance. He sends his friend on a walk. It's a small thing, but a difference nonetheless. The painting done, Madeline loses her life, and Roderick is in despair. Another artistic privilege taken for this film is Roderick believes in magnetism. Because of this, he does not believe Madeline to be dead. They don't really go on to explain why that is, but there you have it. Madeline, wearing white robes, is placed into her coffin. Instead of being placed inside the house under where the friend slept, like in the original story, Madeline was taken outside and placed in the family crypt. The scene was done in a greatly eerie manner. The four of them carrying her coffin across the grounds, the way they did it was amazing. And the crypt itself, I felt, was very well done, especially for the time. Remember, this was done in 1928. Highly impressive. Another change was made here. Originally, Roderick and the friend nailed the coffin shut. This time, Roderick did not want the coffin nailed shut, due to believing Madeline may yet be alive. The doctor, that sneaky devil, nailed it shut anyway. Several days pass. We see a clock pendulum swinging. An ode to the pit and the pendulum, perhaps? Right on point, Roderick is starting to drive himself mad, always seeming to listen for something. Sticking to the original plot, a great storm rolls in. It drives Roderick mad. He is drawn to the windows in the friend's room. Seeing how the storm is upsetting Roderick, the friend offers to read to him to settle his nerves. This next part is all in the short story as well. Roderick, while still distracted and restless, sits as his friend tells the story of Ethelred. It tells of Ethelred breaking down the mighty wooden door of a castle, describing the splintering sound of the wood just as the friend hears a sound, much like that just described. We see what causes the sound. Ethelred slays a dragon, which gives off a piercing scream. Ethelred approaches a shield hanging upon a wall. If you'll notice, on the wall above the great fireplace is also a shield. That was a nice touch. The friend hears a crash as Madeline has returned from the grave. Roderick now admits he has heard Madeline's movement since the day they buried her. She had, in fact, been buried alive. Madeline now comes to the great room where Roderick and the friend occupy. Now for the ending, which is mostly different from the original. Whereas in the original writing, Madeline kills Roderick and the friend escapes in time to see the House of Usher split the house in two from the mighty storm and crumble into the tarn. In this rendition, however, Madeline goes to Roderick, the painting burns, and the three escape from the house. They turn to watch as the House of Usher crumbles into the tarn. Vastly different from the original writing, but beautifully done. And there you have it. Although there were some pretty big changes made, and I will always prefer the original story, I still very much enjoyed this movie. And therefore, we'll be giving it 5 coffins. Solid film, set the tone perfectly, and that musical score, outstanding. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and I will see you all next week for the third and final video of The Fall of the House of Usher.